We're covering this presentation today on Capitol Hill by survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse, his indicted crimes. This was a rare and bipartisan event. It was actually this briefing hosted by members of both parties, designed to empower the actual victims so that we might hear about Epstein's crimes and what should be done from people who tragically experienced them, rather than the so many other people we've heard from. And this comes after the Trump DOJ did systematically cut all of these people out of the recent changes and developments related to the case and hid key information from them. And so right off top, I want to tell you that makes today an unusual shift in this long-running story, where so often the spotlight has been on the pundits and the podcasters and the politicos and some conspiracy theorists talking on and on and on about the Epstein case, about the victims, about their supposed concern, even as, and you see our very deliberate contrast here on the screen, even as the Trump administration cuts these same people out instead of including them and hearing them and their view, the victim's view of what should be done in the quest for supposed transparency and justice. I'm joined by civil rights attorney Nancy Erica Smith. She's represented victims of sexual harassment and workplace harassment, and Michelle Goldberg, New York Times columnist and MSNBC analyst. Both have followed this case extensively. You were there today. What did you see, and how is this different from what I mentioned, which is a lot of people talking about this issue and victims without hearing from them?
Well, I think that, one of the things that people have been saying about these victims quite misleadingly is you hear Republicans say that we can't release these files because we don't want to re-victimize these women, whereas these women are out there begging for disclosure. And I think that something that really hit me listening to them was why disclosure was so important to them. I mean, I knew that some of them had called for the release of these files, but there were two things in particular that they said. One was that a lot of them still, they understand that they were abused, but the circumstances around that abuse, the reason that Jeffrey Epstein was never kind of really punished for that abuse, it's as murky to them as it is to us. And so part of it is just that they very much want to know what happened. But the other thing they said is that the conspiracy theories, the energy around this case, it's like a continual torment. I think every time it's back in the news, they go to pick up their kids and they feel like people are looking at them. And they just know that this is never going to be put to bed until all the questions about it are answered. And so their only hope of closure is getting these documents out there.
And Nancy, the judicial system is supposed to provide a special role for victims. We have victims' rights statements. We have access to any deal that's supposed to be cut. They speak sometimes in the context of sentencing. What is it that you see them seeking, as I mentioned, here in public to make up for what wasn't provided in the original case?
Well, they've been re-victimized and by this process of the Republicans creating this QAnon fury that the Clintons had a pedophile ring out of a pizza shop in Washington, D.C. So they were victimized when that happened. But they've been re-victimized by the lying and the covering up and the original prosecutor, as you pointed out, Acosta being in the Trump cabinet. The judicial system seemed to have worked for them briefly when we saw Epstein go to prison and Maxwell get 20 years and be convicted. And then the Republicans again, Donald Trump specifically, and Bondi, then they used these victims again to keep drumming up this theory that the Epstein files were going to show the Democrats were part of a pedophile.
Right. They weaponized it as propaganda against their opponents rather than actually caring about the crimes.
Exactly. And so they've used these women. I was very struck by the fear that the women expressed. This is so brave. Most of my clients who have been abused in this way have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and reliving it really triggers PTSD. And they are forced to relive it, so at least they're trying to take control of it for themselves. And that's so brave, but they expressed their fear. One woman said she's been followed, and I know this about other victims that wanted to come forward. It's scary for them, and they're so brave, but they want to own it now since it's out there anyway. That's what I agree with Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think that just there's something so cynical, I mean, so deeply cynical about the way that this administration, on the one hand, weaponized this story to get elected. And then not only, I mean, what they've done is worse than nothing, right? Doing nothing would be bad enough. But to actually then kind of show leniency to Maxwell, their abuser, you know, you heard on this tape that they spoke again and again about just how gutting it was to see that. The other thing that struck me is that, you know, I think when we hear Trump say this is a Democrat hoax, a lot of us assume, or at least I assume, that he was kind of talking about the idea that there are files, or maybe that he's in the files, that that's the hoax. But what they hear him saying, or at least some of them, is that you're lying, that none of this happened. And so, again, they feel like, you know, this kind of immensely powerful person is denying. And, you know, all victims struggle to be believed. But to have the president of the United States say it's a hoax and to understand it that way it seems like it has been really agonizing to elect.
Well, I think that's an important point you raise, especially because the normalization of Trump's failures is lowering the bar. But the president does oversee the DOJ and all federal enforcement. He claims to care about crime. These are terrible crimes, some of them now convicted, and the defendant, of course, died in prison. So what you're describing is exactly right. It's a problem when the head of the government is diminishing this, or as I said, that they fired the prosecutor who won this case, which in a normal DOJ is a good thing. You went after a rich, powerful person, you went after their aides, and you won the case. So I want to play, since you bring it up, what we now have, which is the interplay of what Trump has said, and this was one of the victims, Ms. Robson, rebutting it today.
This is a Democrat hoax that never ends. It's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma.
I'm struck by the cruelty of him. The cruelty. A normal president would have had some empathy after those women spoke out about their child abuse. And a normal DOJ would have said, don't be afraid. We're going to keep you safe. You're safe speaking out in the United States of America.